Can you smell that? That's the whiff of desperation coming from Warner Brothers and James Gunn. Take a listen to this. This is a tweet from Jimmy Palmiotti, a comic book writer. Listen, guys, I love everything that James Gunn has brought to the movies. Always fun, always unpredictable, and always that edge of humor and fun that Amanda and I enjoy. The man loves the material, and you can see on display in everything he touches. Great things are coming, and this is the gif he put up. Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. Jimmy, you should have got on your bended knees and said, please, please, please consume the Flash movie. Please consume what James Gunn's doing. Please stop boycotting movies. Warner Brothers about to go in receivership. Please. The whiff of desperation. Here's the problem with all of this. We haven't really seen anything from James Gunn to tell us what he's actually doing. We've had a list of titles, and that's it. And comic book panels teasing us. Now, James Gunn's plan may be the most amazing, most exciting thing ever. I don't know what's coming. I don't know what's not coming. But he's hardly bathed himself in glory since he's come on. His calling out of the Snyderverse as some kind of toxic fandom. Let me give you an example. One reaction that had no need for this reaction. A Snyder fan went onto his comments and said, I miss Henry Cavill. He responded by saying, he's still alive. No, no, no. You are the co-CEO of DC Studios. The person didn't attack you. The person merely said they miss Henry Cavill as Superman. Now, I'm lucky enough just to watch Henry's movies as Superman, and for that to be enough. I would love there to be more. And I think it's disgusting the way he was treated. It reminded me of that time when I was a young 18-year-old boy working behind a deli counter, and I was cutting ham off the bone, and the customer goes, oh, it doesn't look very good, does it? And I said, what are you going to do? Look at it or eat it? Guess what happened when I said that to a paying customer? I got fired. I was living in a bedsit. I didn't know where the next meal, cigarette, can of beer was coming from. The consequences were immense for my actions. And this is the difference between us working class people and your James Gunn. They live in this bubble where everyone's kissing their butt and getting their tongues up their cracks and saying, you're the best, you're the best, you're the best. Unfortunately, he can't handle the fact that the Snyderverse fans don't think he's the best, he's the best, he's the best. Listen, I know that the Snyderverse fans can be a bit rich for some people's taste, but they're passionate and they're committed. And they see the injustice of what's happened with Henry Cavill. So maybe, Jimmy, whether exciting things are coming or not, maybe James Gunn should have been a bit more professional towards the fans. Just ignore them. Let's move over in comparison to Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder during BVS was attacked and attacked. They literally used the death of the man's daughter to try and rail him. Did Zack respond to that? Never, never, never. If a man doesn't respond to baiting like that, why are you responding to the baiting that you are? Because at the end of the day, James Gunn, you've got a lot further to fall. You had those horrific 8-year, 9-year-old, 10-year-old problematic tweets about children. You were joking about children being abused. What did you think was going to happen when you removed Henry Cavill? Sorry, you didn't fire him. You decided to go with another Superman. This is nothing to do whether I think this is the right man for the job. And I do have my doubts. But I've said before, I'm going to be open-minded and consume his stuff if indeed we actually get to see his stuff. But I want to stay on this conversation about comparing Zack Snyder and James Gunn. Stay right here with me. So I had this lovely conversation with Christiane. She's an actor who was on Army of the Dead with Zack Snyder. She was talking up the Snyderverse and restoring it. She's in the fight with the fans. She absolutely adores Zack Snyder. I commented and said, he does sound like a nice guy. So this is how she responded to me. Nice is an understatement. He's so caring, thoughtful, goes out of his way for his people, like he thanked me so many times for working on my daughter's birthday when I was supposed to be off. He has so much love and passion for what he does and his team. It's just amazing. He's a beautiful soul. Everyone says this about Zack Snyder. I've spoken to so many people who have worked with Zack. I'm not saying people who have worked with James Gunn don't feel the same way, but everyone who talks about Zack Snyder, who knows him, says the same stuff. So it's interesting, just because he makes films that you may not like, that you attack him and you hate him. Snyder! But I suppose the essence is, we're talking about someone as a creative, but we're also talking about how one conducts themselves. James Gunn doesn't know when to stop. His ego is huge. Zack Snyder does not have an ego, because we're comparing both of them. And James Gunn's on the internet all the time, seeing what people are saying about him. He does it all the time. Now, I like the side of James Gunn who connects with the fans and answers their questions. But what he said to the fan when she said she was missing Henry Cavill and he said he's still alive, that was ridiculous. And that's not how you win friends and influence people. Look, this is such a divided fan base, and you're just dividing them even further. I'm seeing fans arguing with each other. At the end of the day, I love movies, I love entertainment, but it's not real life. Just remember, guys, we all are the same kind of people. We should all be on the same side. We love movies and great entertainment. At the end of the day, we should be going for the industry, not ourselves. And think about that for a minute. But going back to that Jimmy Paliotti tweet, that is desperation of the highest kind. By the way, before we go on to our next piece of news and conversation, let's talk about this year's San Diego Comic-Con. So pretty much everyone isn't going thus far, apart from Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers are still considering their position. Now, it's clear why this is not happening anymore for most studios and streamers and television networks, because we're about to get a SAG-AFTRA Actors Union strike. And normally you take actors to San Diego Comic-Con, where they're not going to go there if they're on strike. Basically, Comic-Con is something else that the industry have taken the fun out of. I remember Jason Momoa running down the Hall H panel with his trident. It was so exciting. That's what it was all about. The excitement now is gone, not just from DC, but from the entire industry. So Warner Brothers could be one of the few people who go to San Diego Comic-Con, and basically James Gunn, the co-CEO of DC Studios, and the other co-CEO of DC Studios, Peter Safran, could go with some art and some mock-ups and try and hype us up for the future. Actually, I think it will be a damn good idea the way things are right now, because they really need to win the fans back. Flash VFX artist. If it looks like it was made in a week, it was. This isn't me. This is actually the Flash VFX artist, or one of them. So this is what he has to say. One of the main criticisms of The Flash involves its heavy use of CGI. The special effects became so divisive that director Andy Muschietti had to publicly defend the film, stating how the distorted CGI was a conscious decision. Imagine coming out and saying that. Isn't it better to say nothing at all, Warner Brothers and Andy Muschietti? Zach Mulligan, a VFX artist who worked on The Flash, explained the reason behind the poor CGI in The Flash. What were the reasons behind The Flash's bad CGI? In a video posted to his TikTok, Mulligan described how VFX companies are hired by Marvel, Warner Brothers, and other studios to complete their CGI shots. In this case, Warner Brothers states how many shots they need for a sequence, and the VFX studios place bids to work on the film. The workload in each shot varies, yet it's still considered one shot in the total quantity. In other words, you could have 5 shots and they're calling it one shot, right? We've discussed this before, but we've got something to discuss with it. This is proof from the horse's mouth. Because of this, VFX artists are forced to work relentless hours, overtime almost every day, including weekends. Mulligan said, if the VFX companies aren't meeting the unrealistic expectations that these studios are setting, they risk losing out on the future contracts. And there's only so many studios that are making superhero movies anymore. These insane deadlines for VFX shots are happening throughout the industry. Marvel received backlash for their treatment of VFX workers. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, and guess what? They're still treating them the same way. Because as I say, they live in a bubble and they're never going to change. That's why you're seeing the biggest car boot sale in Hollywood history. Hollywood has never been on its knees. It's never been so low before. They've done this to themselves. But they can't change the way they are. That's the problem. And it's going to destroy them. It has destroyed them. The race to put out multiple superhero projects per year across film and television to please shareholders is what Mulligan cites as the reasons behind the poor CGI on a movie like The Flash. When you're putting out this many projects with shorter turnarounds, the VFX will always look worse, Mulligan said. So if it looks like a VFX shot in The Flash was made in a week, it's probably because it was. But The Flash movie's a little bit different, isn't it? Because I'm not doubting what this VFX artist is saying, and I absolutely stand with him. But let's get this clear. The Flash movie started shooting in 2019. I think the movie was done by 2020. So, what the fuck? Why didn't they complete the shots? Why weren't the shots rendered properly? Because they didn't want to pay to finish the shots. It's obvious the Flash situation is different to the rest of the MCU situations with VFX. The Flash opened in theatres on June the 16th, where it significantly underperformed at the box office. The Flash opened to $55 million domestically in its first weekend, a failure for a film with a budget north of $200 million and a marketing cost of roughly $100 million. Unless it has legs in the coming weeks, The Flash will lose money at the box office. It has no legs. It's going to drop by 75%. Now, I can't remember, did Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice drop to about 80%, I think. The difference is Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice had broken opening weekend box office records and pretty much made its money by the time the first week was complete, and it ended on $850 million. This film ain't getting anywhere near that. So, very, very interesting. I have another article shortly, but we'll talk about this first. So this is how low Hollywood is right now, everyone. It's the lack of quality and presentation. You know, bad storytelling is subjective. Whether someone should jump to the left or jump to the right is subjective. But your presentation is the most important thing. It's so important in film and television. And if you don't have the presentation in an era where the technology is there to deliver the presentation in half the cost it used to cost to do things physically, then you've got a problem, because there's no excuses for the Flash movie to look so bad after 3 damn years. If you thought the last article was revealing, take a listen to this. The Flash used audio pulled from YouTube for CGI cameos. Let me repeat that. The Flash used audio pulled from YouTube for CGI cameos. Let's get into this. It turns out the Flash relied upon a surprising source for its CGI cameos, YouTube. During an interview with Screen Rant, the film's supervising sound editor Nancy Nugent revealed some shocking details about where some of its audio was sourced from. I'll tell you the truth, a lot of them were pulled from YouTube. Why would you come out and admit this? It's just like they're trying to destroy their own thing. Why? Why are they doing this? What's going on? Is there a side at WB? Is this Adby and DeLuca trying to kind of make James Gunn and the rest of them look really, really bad? Because let's not forget, Gunn and Zaslav said this was the best movie ever. One of the best CBMs they've ever seen. Zaslav said he saw it 5 times. No, you didn't, you effing liar. And said it's the best CBM he ever saw. She said about the cameos, we were finding those old clips and then it was a matter of removing music if there was music tied to it or just cleaning it up. It's no secret that The Flash features a ton of superhero cameos, including CGI renders of Christopher Reeve, Superman and Helen Slater's Supergirl, as well as Adam West's Batman, among others. Obviously, with the death of Reeve and West, old audio was needed to make the cameo. Sing. However, there's plenty of production quantity audio to draw from, even if you just look at DVDs or Blu-rays of the pair's existing superhero movies. This proves their incompetence, their creative bankruptcy, but first of all, laziness. What's even more surprising is Warner Brothers has an extensive archive of material to use. Laziness. Because it was such a design moment, there was music going on. We could hide a lot of that, Nugent said, explaining the decision. Whereas if it was just playing by itself, it might require us digging deeper into the archives. In other words, we couldn't be bothered to dig deeper into the archives. If that stuff even existed, really, it does exist. It was just a matter of finding out what we were legally allowed to use, which properties and whose voices and all of that, and then finding it on the internet and cleaning it up. The obvious drop in audio quality was perhaps less important than getting the right quotes, and with the audio cleaned up and laid beneath music and sound effects, you can see why this approach was taken. Still, it's an odd choice considering the wealth of material available even commercially. Listen to how much. Listen to the rating IGN gave The Flash movie. IGN reviews of The Flash gave it 7 out of 10. Now this is very, very interesting. I'm sure they gave BVS and Man of Steel less. So this is just so interesting. And said The Flash is an ambitious superhero movie that largely pulls off its tale of two worlds, 2 Flashes and 2 Batmans. The superhero fan service is strong with this one, perhaps too strong at times, but it never fully overshadows Barry Allen's genuinely tragic and heartfelt story of grief. Listen, this is, I just went into that review because it's there in the article, and I just thought, I was interested once I saw 7 out of 10. The Flash movie isn't a 7 out of 10 movie. It's a 5 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10 at best. It's inconsistent. It's not a consistently good movie. It's one of those films you say, well, I like that moment, but I didn't like that, and that moment. And so, but the stuff with the audio just shows you their level of laziness and incompetence. Now, listen, it's something and nothing, but it's another layer to see the shit show that was going on. How did we get here in Hollywood? It was by promoting the wrong people. How many times have you been on the internet and you see a Hollywood Reporter Variety article? Strong woman gets new role. Strong woman is now the CEO of this and in charge of this. And basically, they're removing men and replacing them with women just for being women. Not because they're more qualified than the men, because if they were, that would be absolutely fine. You're seeing this trickle down all through the industry. So in today's show so far, I've showed you the desperation and the incompetence of Warner Brothers Discovery, and it's only just the beginning. In 2018, James Wan directed Aquaman. Aquaman was the next movie after Justice League, and it made $1 billion. Just over $1 billion. It had solid reviews, but of course the gimps at Collider called it a mess. Of course, Aquaman wasn't a mess. It's one of the most beautifully delivered and displayed and presented comic book movie of all time, and the story was brilliant. During the making of the film, I think a lot of us were a bit concerned about Amber Heard and Jason Momoa being the leads of this movie. I'd never seen Amber Heard in anything. Clearly her connections at the time to Johnny Depp got her the role. I was rewatching the film yesterday, and I've always said this, despite, the other stuff in real life that Amber's done and involved in, her performance was pretty solid and strong as Mira, and I was really looking forward to seeing her in the sequel, because Mira is a character and a force of will all of her own in the DC universe. She's actually important if you're going to, elevate this Aquaman and Atlantis DC universe. But let me ask you a question. After Aquaman, and it made $1 billion, James Wan announced that he was going to do a trench horror movie. Now, we saw the trench or elements of the trench in Aquaman, but that was the tip of the iceberg. About 6 months to a year later, they cancelled it. Of course, this was absolutely outrageous, and James Wan deserved better. What's the question? If you were a studio head and James Wan delivered to you one of the most beautifully presented comic book movies of all time, wouldn't you be putting him in more control of the DC universe? Jesus Christ, you've got rid of Snyder, you need an auteur, you need someone special, and James Wan is somebody special. No. Since 2018, we've been waiting for this sequel. Nothing in 2019, nothing in 2020, nothing in 2021, nothing in 2022. Hopefully in 2023, we finally see Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. And one thing's for sure, if it's up to James Wan, he will deliver you something utterly special like the first film. Unfortunately, it's not just up to James Wan, because James Wan has had his vision interfered with, and interfered with. James Gunn is the latest CEO to interfere with his vision. Now, I spoke yesterday in a video about Ben Affleck cameoing in Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. And it was going to be very aquatic for Batman. The Batmobile was going to go underwater. He was going to go underwater and fight a villain. It was going to be really, really awesome. Who wouldn't want to see that? What kind of CEO deletes all of that when they're in such trouble? They've had one of the biggest flops in Hollywood history. Batfleck would have put people back in his seats more than Michael Keaton would have. Guess what? Michael Keaton didn't bring people to cinemas. I want to repeat that. Michael Keaton, I love you as Batman, but you didn't bring people to cinemas. Isn't that interesting? Because that's the very reason Michael Keaton's in that film, because they didn't feel that Ezra Miller could pull it off himself, couldn't put butts in seats. That's why they decided to go away from Thomas Wayne and Jeffrey Dean Morgan, which I think would have put more butts in seats anyway, because they would have been more faithful to the Flashpoint graphic novel story. But they went all in with Michael Keaton, not just in The Flash, Batgirl, Blue Beetle, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Gunn came in and they changed their minds. Abby and DeLuca were in temporary charge of DC. They got rid of Keaton and they wanted to bring back Cavill and Affleck. So Affleck had shot some stuff for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, and it sounds really, really awesome. and Gunn has deleted it. So basically, look, when I like a director or he's doing DC or something I'm interested in, I do a lot of research. I know a lot about James Wan. He's a very proud director. He's very technically gifted in computers and everything. He's just not he's not just a good director. And you can tell because the visuals in Aquaman were so stunning. And if it's up to him, he's going to deliver you the same visuals. But how can he? This is the problem James has got. Because if they didn't finish off the Flash rendering for the CGI, then we've got another problem with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. I still suspect they may shelve this movie or shove it on Max. I don't know what they're going to do. But, you know, James Wan isn't Andy Machete. You can't tickle him under the chin. You can't pat him on the head and give him a DCU movie and say, there. James Wan is the real deal. He's DC's version to Quentin Tarantino. You can't mess with that guy. And I can promise you, James Gunn and James Wan are clashing swords as we speak. And as I say, you don't mess around with James Wan and tell the tale. This is a prolific producer, a prolific director, and he gave us one of the best CBMs of all time. I hear what you all say. Nobody talks about Aquaman. No, they were too busy making it $1 billion. People on the internet are funny, aren't they? They think it's all talk. The movie made over $1 billion and was mostly well reviewed. And I love it. It's up there as one of my favourite DCEU movies. It's in my damn top 5, probably just behind Wonder Woman at 5. But it's brilliant. And James Wan did a great job. And this is how they paid him back. Getting rid of the Trench movie. And now we've got James Gunn interfering with his vision. And I'll repeat what I keep on saying in previous videos. James Wan has already came out saying he can't keep up with all the changes they want him to make. This is not fair because he's in the middle of this. Don't be surprised in the end if we hear James Wan walks away. But I can tell you something for nothing. James Wan is a very direct man. He's on Instagram. You should follow him. His tag is Creepy Puppet. He's amazing on there. I don't think you can comment on there or the comments are reduced, but he's great when he can come up there. But he gave us a gift in Aquaman. So when I hear Snyder fans targeting the Aquaman movie, nobody's talking about it. Look, I love you all. I do, and I know what you're fighting for, but leave James Wan and Aquaman the fuck alone. You know, that film never did anything to hurt you. And as we know, James Wan was frantically consulting with Zack Snyder during the production and shooting process of Aquaman. So James Wan isn't an enemy, isn't part of the problem. So leave the director and the film alone, please. I'm asking you politely. But anyway, James Wan's a great guy. As I say, I can tell you something for nothing. When this shit show is over, he's going to come out and he's going to be vocal about what they did to him and his movie. So if this movie ends up being shit, it's not James Wan's fault. This will be on James Gunn. But how much of the problems with the Flash movie are on James Gunn? Well, he changed the entire ending of the movie where we get a nice happy ending with Supergirl, Keaton Batman, Henry Cavill's Superman, and Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman. That could have been a good ending. That may have solved a lot of problems. Would it have brought people into cinemas? Probably not. We'll never know that, if the CGI was still going to be shit. And, obviously there's the Miller situation. There's so many different reasons, why the Flash movie has bombed so hard. But it is going to be interesting with Blue Beetle to see how deep the DC problem is. Because if Blue Beetle does well, then we can say, well, the problem isn't, unrepairable. And, obviously Ezra Miller was a big reason that movie failed. But the Flash movie was a movie that we didn't know really how it was going to do. Not even analysts really knew one way or the other how it was going to do. It was going to be 115 to 145, then it was 70, then it was 50, then it was 55. It actually opened at 55, right? So nobody really knew how that movie was going to end financially. But what's interesting now, Blue Beetle becomes a very important test case for Peter Safran and James Gunn, because when that movie's released and the opening weekend's box office is revealed, we're going to know how big the problem is.